Okay, here we go. Dennis Young here, the Primitive Substance YouTube channel, and some fantastic guests continue to come on. And now the great Graham Clark, fantastic violin player, many years of playing with David Allen, and we'll talk about some other projects he's worked on. So, Graham, thank you for coming on.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
So let's talk about your early life, learning violin, and how you got interested in music.
Well, I was an avid listener to classical music as a child. I started listening to classical music when I was really quite young. But my father was a musician, and for some reason, even though I kept asking him for lessons, he always put it off. I think he didn't want me to become a musician. But when I finally got to my senior school, we could all have violin lessons, and I asked to have violin lessons. He still made me wait another term. So I was 12 years old when I started playing the violin, which is quite old for a fiddle player. But I had good ears, so when I was learning my lessons, I would get it by listening to the teacher rather than by reading the music. And I would play along with my records, and I'd copy everything by playing along with the records. And it was
that helps.
Yeah, it was a wonderful, wonderful way of learning. But it did mean that I didn't really develop as a reader.
Okay, so you naturally just.
I could pick things up by ear easily. Yes.
Go ahead.
And after a couple of years of lessons, my dad realized that I wasn't really doing what the teacher was asking me to do. I was just copying records. So I stopped having the lessons and kept copying the records. And eventually I was introduced to a rock band called Curved Air, because a friend of mine
great.
That terrific band. And a friend of mine said, well, you might like this because it's got a violin in it. So I listened to it and loved it. And I'd have been about 13 or 14. And I just played along with that on my violin. Then I took up guitar, and then I heard Pink Floyd and Deep Purple. And then in 1974, I heard an album called Camembert Electrique, which I bought.
Okay, I know. Amazing record.
Well, the thing was, it was cheap. I mean, when a record was about £2, this was 60 pence, roughly. Yeah. So I thought I can afford that. And that was the beginning of my connection to Gong. A couple of years later, I formed my own.
I think that's the best Gong record, one of the best.
Well, I
think that's one of the best Gong records.
Yeah, it's a great album. I mean, I loved everything from that period, 1971, right up to, well, even Shamal. I liked Shamal. I found once it got into the jazz rock thing, it kind of changed its vibe. Still great music, but it didn't have that whimsy that I used to love, And what I used to do was we used to rehearse. I got a band together, and we used to play mainly tracks from Camembert and Flying Teapot, and
wow.
We didn't do any.
That's not easy.
We didn't know that.
That's right. You must have good band. You must have had good bandmates too back then playing that. That's not easy music to play.
Well, I think that we didn't know it was difficult, so we just got on with it. The guitar, there was another guitarist, there was a bass player, a chap called Graham Massey, who he played guitar really quite bizarrely, and he also had a stand with like hubcaps and tin cans with beans in, and he just played percussion on this thing. And he's ended up being a real mover and shaker in the world of dance music. He was in a band called 808 State. So he's done pretty well for himself.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was the band. That was our first band.
Is he still playing music, Graham?
Yeah. I saw him just the other night. He was playing at his partner's birthday party, and they were playing 808 Played. It's fantastic.
That is great. So how long did this band go on? Did you play clubs, or did you play
well, we used to get
other places?
we'd been inspired by Here and Now and Planet Gong, and we used to get like local community centres to let us use their community centre, and we'd do gigs for nothing. I only stayed with the band 18 months or so because or maybe 2 years, because I then moved on to go to university. But they stayed on doing it, and then that band kind of dissipated. They played for at least another year, and then they all went off in different directions. They had a band called Biting Tongues, which was very good. And then one of the lead singer and the drummer had a band called Crispy Ambulance, and they were a Factory Records band, you know.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Factory. Yeah.
Manchester band. A Manchester record label.
Yeah. There's that they branched off into more dance type music, and then you went to university to study more music.
Well, I studied biology, and then I changed. I did biology, and then I did experimental psychology. But I did learn a lot about playing jazz while I was there, but only through playing with people. I didn't study it formally at all. Apart from one weekend workshop that I did in 1982 with the great Peter Ind on bass and Eddie Harvey, the piano player and trombone player. So I had a weekend workshop, and I learned everything in 2.5 days that kept me going for the next 25 years.
Wow.
Terrific.
That's something. See, just a little bit like that can inspire you to newer heights with your talent. You know, you just needed a little bit of direction from these great musicians.
That's right. I mean, I'd always been fascinated by and sort of very kind of inspired by the idea of music as more than just an entertainment, as a real sort of path. You know, and I like that.
Well, you've certainly had that. So how did you meet the divided alien there, David Allen? That is I have a record here of some of his hit songs from 1985 to 99, and you're on it and play some incredible violin.
Oh, well, thank you.
How did that happen?
Well, first of all, if you remember the album, I think it's Good Morning. Do you remember Good Morning? On the back, it's got it had his address in Mallorca.
Oh, okay.
So I wrote to him, and a few weeks later, he replied. And I'd asked him about some books. I wanted to know what books he would recommend. And
boy, is that great luck!
And he wrote back, and he gave me some suggestions. And then a year or two later, he was touring with Here and Now as Planet Gong.
Okay.
And they were playing in Salford, and we went to see them. We met them backstage afterwards. And that would have been 77. And then he disappeared. He disappeared. That would have been 78, I think. 78. And then I didn't see anything or hear anything of him for years and years and years. And in 1988, he came back to England to do originally he was going to do workshops in his Zero Initiation workshops, he was calling them, those sort of rebirthing workshops. And I went to see him because he had a gig at the Tabernacle in Notting Hill. And at the time, I'd been busking in the Underground. I used to busk in the London Underground.
Oh, okay. Huh.
So I turned up at this gig. I've been working all day. I had the fiddle with me. And I thought I'd stay on and see how he was, because he was a big hero of mine when I was a teenager. And he looked down at me and looked down at the case and said, "Is that a saxophone?" "No, it's a violin." And we got talking because he was living in Glastonbury, and my partner at the time was living just 6 miles down the road. So I said, "Well, maybe I should get in touch with you. You know, maybe we should meet up and have a play."
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah. When are you getting back down there?" "Oh, I'm getting back on Tuesday. I'll give you a ring toward the end of the week." He said, "No, ring me on Tuesday." I got home, got to Somerset, and I rang him, and he already decided he wanted me to play with him. He offered me a gig. The problem was that in the meanwhile, my partner's father had died. And the very day of his funeral was the day of this gig. So I had to say no.
Oh, boy.
He said, "Don't worry, mate. There'll be others."
There you go.
The
Wow.
next time that was in the May of '88, and I did my first gig with him in June '88, solstice. Yeah, so that's how I met him, and he lived down the road, so I would go over there and we would have rehearsals, and he'd come over to my place and have dinner, and that's how we met.
So who was in the band at that time when you joined? What was there some real former, like the Gong members at that time?
No, nobody that you would have known of. There was Wandana, who's now known as Taria. She was playing harmonium, and there was a guy called Space playing congas, and that was it. David, me, Wandana, and Space.
Okay.
And we played a lot of his acoustic songs, and we did a lot of sort of Indian chant songs, like what they do. They call it kirtan, and we did a lot of that.
Right.
And then we played a festival in Umbria, the Rock in Umbria festival. That was the same year that John Cale played and Johnny Thunders. That was a great event. And slowly, then he did some gigs with Didier Malherbe and Shamal. And I sat in with them on a couple of gigs when they were doing it in England. And then I sort of slowly, I don't know, it sort of melted together. It just formed. So for a while, the band was David, Shamal, Didier, Wandana, and me. No bass player.
Oh, okay. No bass. Wow.
Bass.
That must have sounded. Didier was incredible.
Well, he was
what a musician. Deeply
inspiring. True, a true artist. He really fuses it all together. He's always got some. There's always some kind of humor, depth. He's moving, surprising, and I love his playing. I learned a great deal. That's not right. I was inspired a great deal by being able to play with him.
Yeah. Well, he's just a completely underrated musician in that whole genre field of experimental type of music, and what David was doing. I can't see him not playing with David and adding that extra touch.
I mean, David, Gilly, and Didier were like the core of Gong. That was.
Yep.
Yeah, they were really it. So I felt.
And then.
Somebody go on.
Now, what about this Gong Masan? What was that? What band was in that? That Gong.
Well, that was the band I just described. Well, when we recorded.
Oh, you described. Okay.
Yeah, that was the band.
And then.
But then we played when we recorded though. Okay. We recorded with Gilly was over to record Mother Gong, and so we recorded Gong Maison with the bass player and drummer from Gilly's band, Conrad and.
Boy, that must have been an interesting experience. Being part of that.
It was stunning. We were in a residential, Dave Anderson's residential studios up in Wales, in mid Wales, Voyle Studios, and we were there. So they recorded 3 albums there. We did the Gong Maison, and David and Gilly did, I think, the Tree one. Can't remember its full name.
Right, I know that one.
Yeah. And they also did Was it the Owl and the Tree? No. And they also did they did a Mother Gong album there as well. So
boy,
those 3.
And you got to play on all those.
No, only the Gong Maison one. So I was there for just the Gong Maison. Yeah.
Okay.
But then we did. I think we played. By that time, that was 1989. We played at Glastonbury Festival that year. On the Avalon field. Oh,
that's okay.
But again, we didn't have the bass player and drummer. It was just that band. But then Harry Williamson, who was Gilly's husband at the time.
I wanted to ask you about him. I have a Harry Williamson record here.
Well, that's not Harry. That's not Harry Williamson.
Yeah,
that's David.
Record. I think it's David, but Harry's on it, I think.
Yeah, that's a picture of him on the back. If you look on the back, that's Harry.
Yes, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, that's Harry.
There it is. Look at that. Yeah, so that's quite a record. That's got some really great moods to it. what did he play, Harry? Was he just producer? Did he play? I see he played keyboards.
He played keyboards. He had synthesizers, and he played guitar, and he could sing. I think he sang. Yeah, I think he sang as well. Yeah, he was a good member of the band.
So after that, you continued to play with David in the 90s. I see you had some records with him.
Yes, what happened was I stopped. Well, so Gong developed into being Gong Maison developed into being Gong, because we had Pip Pyle on drums, who'd been on the early 1971 albums of Camembert, Obsolete, and Continental Circus. We had Didier, who was originally an original part of the band, and David. So we had three members of the early band, and we had Keith the bass on bass, who was from Here and Now, and that was the Planet Gong. So we thought we could call it Gong again. We dropped the Maison and it became Gong. But then in 91, I started doing a trio. David got this trio together with me and Mark Robson. That was Magic Brothers. And we did a tour of this. Well, we did a sort of an unofficial tour of the States, and it was great. It was really good times. And
David,
I left.
Go ahead.
Go on.
No, sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, it's all right. I'll get back to that.
I want to ask you, what type of crowds were there? Was it like the devout following of David? Real Gong fans that.
In the early days, it was mainly people that remembered him
I'm sure.
Before. Yeah. But it did grow to having people that had heard of the band through listening to other bands. They were younger. We were starting to draw a younger audience who'd never seen the band before. Yeah. But I stopped playing with both Gong and David in 1992. At the end of 92, I wrote my resignation letter in 93, early 93. I had some other things on, and I was finding it it wasn't really what I wanted anymore. But then I see the poster you have behind you of the 25th reunion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I was invited to play at that, and I did. And that's when I rejoined again. I didn't join the band proper, but I did start working with David again. And we started to do duo shows, and we did Magic Brothers, and we did a trio thing with Shamal as well. And it kind of, I got back into playing with everybody, and it was certainly with David anyway. And once or twice I did play with the main band, but I'd sit in, or I might dep if they couldn't get a sax player. So that was good fun. And then I
always loved you mentioned Pip Pyle. Another fantastic drummer.
I love playing with Pip. It took me a little while to get used to it, because the fiddle, violin's quite a delicate sound. It doesn't sound delicate if you're in an acoustic situation. You can really get stuck in. But when you've got a big rock band behind you, it's pretty light. And the way Pip plays, it's like, it's like rolling waves of percussion.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to work out how to play with him. But eventually I got it. And one of the greatest drummers I've worked with. Fantastic.
So mid-90s, you're back with David again. So how long did that last?
Well, then we were doing things every now and again until the year before he died. So I think it would have been. Well, he didn't come back in 2014. It would have been the last time we played would have been 2013. 2013.
Okay. Yeah, that's a shame. He got really sick there. It was really very sad to see his passing.
Yeah, it was. It was quite an upsetting time.
And I'll never forget. He died on Friday the 13th. That was really appropriate. Today's
it's even stranger than that. It's even stranger than that, because he tells a tale. Have you got the books, the Dreaming a Dream books? Not the Dreaming, Gong Dreaming books.
No, I don't have that. No, I don't have that.
This one?
No, I don't have that. I should get that.
It's pretty rare now. It's pretty rare now. But he tells a story of when he decided he wasn't going to. He didn't want to play with the band anymore, and he just left. He just walked out on a gig. And it's a story in here where he says how he found himself. I think it was. Let's see if I can find this. It would have been early '75. Yeah, he just disappeared, and he left the band, and the band did the gig without him. And he said he found himself sitting in a churchyard, in a graveyard, and he looked at the gravestone that was next to him, and it was. I'll just read it. I'll just read it to you because it's extraordinary. He says,
Sure. Love to hear.
I ran from the. Sorry, let me just read this here. He said, I ran from the roadside and hid among some bushes in a churchyard. I was squatting beside a tombstone that read, "In memoriam to my brother Tim, died March the 13th, 1875.
Wow.
So that was that.
That is something.
So March the 13th meant something.
Wow, to have that exact date. Man. Boy, that is eerie.
Yeah, gave me the shivers when I...
So did you do some of the last tours with him? Was that when you couldn't play anymore, when you played with him at the end?
I didn't. Right. So I saw him playing with the new band, yes. And I sat in a few times with them, when they came to Manchester. Yeah, I thought it was a great band. It's much more rocky than the version that I was playing in, but terrific stuff.
Now, do you know Josh Pollock? He was in the University of Eras. Josh
Yeah,
Pollock.
I met him when he came over. They played a show at one of my local pubs, and they came to my house and hung out. Yeah. I know Josh. Well, I've met Josh. I knew Michael Clare more, and Warren I didn't know very well. But yeah, I met them when they came over.
He's a great guy. I did an interview with Josh a while back on the channel here, and he really had some great stories about playing with Daevid and all his other creative adventures he's involved in.
Yeah, as I say, I didn't know him very well. He's still playing.
So, yeah, he's still playing. He's still creating music and theater, and he's one creative guy.
Super.
So let's hear about I see you played with other musicians. Did you play with Keith Tippett? Was that did some work with him?
That was quite a long time ago. That was when I was living in London. I was living in Bristol.
Oh, okay.
And then I moved to London in '85, and I bumped into Keith on a coach going from London back to Bristol. We'd seen each other around. I'd heard him play, and we knew who each other was, but we'd never worked together. And we just got talking about music. He said, "Oh, we should do some duo work or trio work." No. He had this bass player called Tony Moore, and he organised.
Right.
There was a couple of gigs that we did in London, and just totally freely improvised. And then I did some duo things with him in London and in Bristol. We played in Bristol. I don't know how many gigs we did, maybe half a dozen, but it was a good thing to do. I enjoyed it. It wasn't just enjoyable, it was satisfying. He was a great piano player.
Well, he was another guy, I believe, underrated in music, Keith. I mean, what a talent. And what a player.
And he was funny.
And he looked fun. And that song on Cat Food by King Crimson, I mean, he really makes that song.
I ought to listen to it again.
Yeah. So then you worked with Ja Wobble too?
Again, I did just half a dozen gigs with him. Yeah, I don't really think, again, I mean, the sound of that band was so thunderous. It was hard to have the fiddle really in it. But there's an album called Largely Life in Hartlepool and Elsewhere, and I'm on that. That was from the first gig I did with him. So yeah, I did half a small number with him. Yeah.
Has anybody else you played with that you want to mention here that comes to mind that did some gigs or recordings?
I've done odds and bits with all sorts of people. I did some stuff with. I was on some really early recordings with a Manchester band called Elbow. I did a tour with Lamb, another Manchester band. I used to be in a band with Graham Massey called Toolshed. We did that for years. It's still going, but I'm not part of it anymore. What else have I done? I had a trio with Brian Godding and a drummer called Dave Fowler, and we did an album. We didn't do an album. We did a recording for the Radio 3. We did some stuff. That band was called Motive Force. I had another trio with the bass player from Lamb and a drummer called Milo Fell. So it was John Thorne and Milo Fell. And that was when we did the album Isthmus, which was, again, freely improvised. I did a duo thing with Stephen Grew, and we did an album. It was just called Improvisation Series 1, because I thought I'd do another one, but I haven't done yet. Who else? Oh, I used to work with a Manchester guy called Brian Glancy. Now, he's not particularly well known, but he was very deeply loved. He was on the Manchester scene for a long time. He was part of what was called the Manchester Buskers. He worked with Mark Burgess from the Chameleons. He was the guy who kind of got. Well, he had a band with Johnny Bramwell and Pete Jobson and Andy Hargreaves. They were called The Mouth, and I played with them a bit.
What a name!
They got rid of him, and they became I Am Clute. So yeah, Brian was quite a special guy. He sad to say he died in 2006, but his inspiration is still there. You know, it's one of those guys. Who else have I played with?
No, that's something. Yeah, those guys, their music never dies. You know, it just keeps going. People find them. You know, like Daevid. I found Daevid at a cutout of a Gong record when I was in college in late 70s, and I was like, wow, this is amazing.
What was the album?
Music, and I just kept buying everything David Allen I could find. So, what are you working on now? So, have you been still doing music, Graham? Or are you?
Yeah, I'm not doing as much as I used to. I have been doing quite a bit of work with a guy called Martin Archer, who has a fantastic. He's got an incredible label called Discus Music. There's a couple of hundred releases on there, and it's all interesting exploratory music. I just recorded something with him a couple of days ago. It's for an album by a band called, it's his band, it's a sort of his band. It's called High Res Heart. And there's a trumpet player, bass player, drummer. Is it drum? Yeah. Wait a minute, what drums?
So.
Oh, yeah, there's percussion, yeah. Martin plays saxes.
Okay. Now, how would you describe this music? Alternative jazz? Is it?
Yeah, it comes out of jazz. He's very inspired by the Art Ensemble of Chicago. So it's got that kind of vibe a lot of the time. Yeah, the drummer is a guy called Martin Pine, who also plays vibes. So you've got this set of, we're not always all playing all the same time, and you have all these different combinations. That's what I used to like about Gong Maison as well. You know, you'd have a duo or a trio, but then you'd have the full band, and the same thing works. Same thing happens with High Res Heart. But they're mainly improvisations rather than tunes that we improvise on. So a lot of it's out of that area. I've been talking to. I don't know.
Please post where we could find this music. You know, after the interview, please tell me where everybody could find the music that you just described. The label.
The label is called Discus Music, and that's their website is Discus Music, I think. Yeah.
Discus Music. Okay.
Yeah, Discus Music.
Do they put this out on CD? Is it vinyl? Is it just digital?
It's mainly, it's CD and downloads, and I think they do special vinyl for special things. But I've done quite a few albums for his label. I've done something with. I can't see how a label. Sorry, I can't hear you. No, I'm listening. I can't hear you.
No, you did some. Oh, you did some things with what you were going to say?
Oh,
recently?
I've played on quite a few. Well, not a large number. When you've got 200 albums in your catalogue, you know, a
Oh my
dozen's not
gosh.
many. But I've been on a few of his albums. You know,
Okay.
I've done a couple with. I've recorded on a couple with Ron Keynes. Do you remember a band called, I think it was East of Eden he was in?
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I played. I think it was East of Eden.
Were you a
Yeah,
were
Ron.
you a were you a fan of Von de Graaff Generator when they had Graham Smith in the band? Do you remember
Well,
that?
no, I wasn't really, but I used to know Graham when I lived in Bristol, and I really liked him, but I never really
Yeah,
got into. So by the time I sort of moved more into the jazz world, you know,
got it.
after I'd been a big Gong fan in my teens. In my early 20s, I moved much more into jazz and trying to play sort of more contemporary jazz. So I
Right.
kind of shifted my attention from psychedelic rock, jazz rock to well, John Coltrane and Eric Dolphy, you know, Michael Brecker, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, and then further, you know, things like Alan Holdsworth and yeah.
Oh, I loved Alan Holdsworth. There's another underrated, amazing guitarist for that whole era. You know, what a player.
Well, I find him again incredibly inspiring and very moving. A lot of people don't realize.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear him dripping with emotion, you know, but a lot of people just get kind of
Yeah.
overwhelmed by the speed. Yeah,
Right.
but I find him very powerful.
Yeah, he was. And I loved David when he played the glissando guitar, you know, when that, oh, what a sound.
Well, he really mastered that, you know.
He
He
did.
really did. I mean, he could play it. He could play it like oh, he just play anything on using glissando.
Did you get a chance to play with, yeah. Did you get to play with Steve Hillage at all?
I did. Right, so I did a Glastonbury Festival gig with him on the Glade stage, and I did a couple of jam sessions at the. No, I did a jam session with him with System 7 at. Oh yeah, we also played a festival. Was it the Big Chill? No, Beautiful Days Festival. There's a little clip of that on the web on the YouTube somewhere. Beautiful Days.
Okay.
Because I depped because they couldn't get a sax player, so I did all the sax parts on fiddle. And played with Hillage then.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah, I've played with Steve a few times. I would love to do more with him, but I think he's got his thing that he's doing. You know, System 7 with Miquette, and it's a real unit. You know, it's really good.
Yeah, he's a fantastic guitar player. I mean, really great player.
Another great influence. You know, great inspiration to me. I mean, I mean, I used to listen to Gong and Hillage more than anything else, you know, when I was a late teen. But during my early 20s, as I say, my attention shifted to jazz. So
well, that's a good background. I mean, you know, you go to jazz, and then once you learn jazz, it can be complicated. You could play a lot of. It's great. You can improv too. That's another important thing.
Well, that was really all I could do. I wasn't a particularly good reader.
Player, and that really gets you involved. But that really gets you involved with a lot of different musicians that are into improvisation, live improvisation.
Well, if you're listening, you can make what you do fit anything.
Right. And it's the right players. Right.
Yeah. I had a trio for a while with Pete Fairclough, who's a tremendous drummer, and Dave Sturt, the bass player from Gong, the current bass player.
Oh,
and that was a free improvising thing. We played a festival 2 or 3 times, and I did a few gigs here and there, but Pete stopped playing through ill health, really. But for me, that trio was really interactive, and we were able to get into areas that I couldn't get it. I hadn't explained it properly. I was playing guitar, so I was playing guitar in that band. So, and it became a very open, freely improvising, but it is still pretty funky at times. Right.
Now, I wanted to ask you about your equipment. Now, do you use a electric violin, or do you use a a violin that's mic'd?
Well, when I'm playing with a very heavy rock band, yeah, I play an electric violin.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I didn't used to. I always used to use a stripped mic on my acoustic violin, but they kept breaking. Then I used to use a little gooseneck, but the bands got louder and the feedback got worse. So yeah, I did end up getting an electric, and I'd use that for very loud bands. But for most of what I do, I play an acoustic violin that was made in Mittenwald in Bavaria in 1840. A guy called Knilling.
Oh wow!
It's not a particularly valuable fiddle in violin terms, but it's got an extraordinarily powerful, bright, edgy sound which works in a rock band or in a jazz band, because you got to cut through the cymbals.
Right. I would think you need that.
And I usually
need
play
that. Especially if you're playing with heavy players.
Yeah, I've got, and I play to a microphone. I've got a Hebden Sound hypercardioid microphone, and I play to that. And it's very powerful. And if it's not rock level, it works. Yeah. There's another project I'm in. I forgot to tell you about. It's called Slow Down Motion, and that is with a guy on guitar called Joe Brown who plays. He's got all sorts of patterns that he plays with delays and things and makes beautiful soundscapes, and a drummer called Laurie Agnew who also plays Ableton, Ableton Live. So he's playing drums, he's also using sequences that he's triggering from the Ableton, and I just blow over that.
That's something.
I play. And I sometimes use the electric with them. If we don't have much time to set up, I use the electric. But if there's plenty of time, I can use my microphone with my real violin. Yeah.
Now, is there a record out on? Do you have a record you're working on with this band, or
they've made a record? It will be coming out. There's a couple of clips from the recordings on Instagram. I can send those to you.
Sure, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, it's very good. I think they're very good guys, and it makes my life easy because I can just float amongst what they're doing. It's nice. What else am I doing? I'm still doing little jazz gigs.
So much.
Yeah, I'm still doing the odd little jazz gig. I've got one coming up on Sunday in Manchester. So with just a duo gig with a pianist called Richard Weatherall, and I've got a few more of those dotted about through the year.
That's fantastic. You're still busy with music. It's so great that you're still playing. It really is. You're quite a talent, Graham. I mean, I've heard you on those records, and you've done some really fantastic music.
Oh well, thank you.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad you were able to do this today. It's quite an honor to have you and all these other guests that have been coming on and talking about your music and working with some fantastic artists.
I've been very fortunate. I often say if we could have squashed it all into 10 years, it would have been a hell of a career.
I'm sure.
It's spread out over 40,
I mean, just to play with David Allen, I would have been excited. That's one of my heroes of growing up in music.
Me too. To work with David was basically, it fulfilled my teenage ambition. Once they called the band Gong, I just thought, I've done it now. I've played with the band I wanted to play with, because I'd given up idea of that. I'd given up hope of that because I thought the band was over. I thought there was no more Gong. Well, not that kind of Gong anyway. There was still Pierre Merlin's Gong. But
you never knew with David what he had planned.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
But for somebody to answer from the back of his record a letter you sent, that's quite an amazing story.
Well, Johnny's got all the letters that I think Johnny's got a lot of the letters that people sent him. So he's probably got my letter in there somewhere. But what happened to the letter that David sent me was terrible. I was such a fool. I was so excited about this. I rang my friend Martin, who was the guitarist in my first band, and I read it out to him in in the telephone box, and I left it in the telephone box.
Oh, oh well, it's in your memory. That's the main thing.
Yeah. Well,
You remember it. You're all those great concerts and all that, all the great stuff you're continuing to do.
Well,
into the future.
It's being a good time. You know, there's all sorts of stuff happening.
What do you think about modern music now? Now, what do you think of modern music and some of the music creating on laptops and all this? I don't know. It's AI involved. How's your feeling on this?
I don't really know much about it, to be honest with you. I mean, I listen sometimes to. I mean, when I listen to, I don't listen to a lot of things these days. I'm thinking about the guys that I work with in this slow down motion thing and what they're doing. I like that, and I like listen. I'm just every now and again something will grab me, but I'm not sort of seeking things anymore. You know.
Yeah.
And as for AI being involved, I don't know. It seems like a shortcut.
Yes,
but on the other hand, but if you think about it, some people approach music that way anyway. So even if they weren't using a computer to do it, they would be taking the same approach mentally. I mean, some people are very just intuitive and reactive and engaged that way, but other people are more mechanical and they work it out in cycles and sequences and they do all the numbers. So in a way, I don't think AI is very different from that mathematical approach to music. I think that will, you know, and when I hear music that's written in that way, it doesn't grab me if I feel it that way. But then, you know, I might listen to a really minimalist bit of synthesizer music that sounds very, very empty, and it will move me to tears because it's so bleak. You know, there's nothing in the music, but it moves me because there's nothing there.
Yeah, there's space. You know, there's space there. I like that.
You know, if you, I don't know if you've ever been to a desert or an icy tundra or anything like that. You know, it's moving because there's nothing there. I find that it gets me. I could imagine that would be like, well, you know, if you went to the moon, you know.
You're right. Well, there's so much music out there. That's the thing. There's so much to listen to and digest. It's, you know, you're right. You pick out something you hear. That's how I do it too. I'll go through something on Bandcamp and all of a sudden, wow, I like that. And then there's something else who's like, oh, this is terrible. Move on. You know, it doesn't do anything for you.
Even the things that seem to be terrible, sometimes it just means you've got to listen to them a few times. You know, because I always say that it isn't the musician who makes the music, it's the listener. You know, the listener makes the music out of what they hear. That's what I believe. You know, your experience is you're creating that. You know, I say it's like I'm a provider of ingredients. You're the chef.
That's true. I agree. That's a great analogy. That's exactly what it is.
Because you know, people think that they are having something transmitted from the musician or from the artist. They're not really. When I'm playing, I'm in a kind of non-feeling zone. You know, I'm just focusing on the sound, seeing what I can get. And if I find something, I'm going to play it. But I'm not transmitting my emotion to you. I'm giving you sounds, and you're interpreting it in a way to get emotion out of it. And you know, I find that a useful way of thinking about music. And it also means if you don't like it,
well, the best way too is you're playing. If you're playing live, that's why I think live music is never gonna take away from all this, you know, computerized music that's so perfect. I think the live events will still bring people out, and that's what you do too. So that's important.
It's really that thing of engagement. You know,
exactly.
We're both focused on the sound.
Exactly.
You know, the musician and the audience. We're both focused on the sound, and that plugs us into each other. you know, and that's when, you know, when we're both, it's like a mutual focus of attention, and then the magic
Right.
happens.
Agree.
You know, that's when
Right. Then it's magic.
yeah, then there's
Right. There is. Then it's the whole, you're relating, they're relating, and it's one big energy that's together. That's always an amazing feeling. I'm sure you've had that a number of times playing in different
yeah. I mean, I used to not like to play solo. I
bands.
used to find playing solo a bit, you know, I like the interaction. You know, but
Yes.
once I thought differently about it, once I thought, you know, in interaction with other musicians, but then I thought, wait a minute, no, there's another thing happening here. There's my relationship to the instrument,
Hmm.
and that's an interaction.
Right.
And then there's the focus that I've got on the music, and then there's the audience focusing on it. So between us, we can create something. Yeah. Nope.
I agree. That's true. That's true. Looking at it that way.
I tried to
So,
do
Graham,
some.
this has been a fantastic almost hour here.
Okay.
Go ahead, keep going.
I was just going to say I was invited to do some, well, many years ago I was invited to do a solo thing, and he said, "Oh, bring your effects," and I never did all that sort of thing. So that's how I started playing with Graham Massey again after so long.
Okay.
I invited him to do the synthy stuff, and then I thought, oh, I could do that with my laptop and play along with my laptop. So I got to this festival to do it, and the laptop wouldn't work, just wouldn't do it. So I ended up playing solo, and it worked. I thought, I don't need the backing. You know, the people will invent their own context. So I'm perfectly happy to do solo gigs now. I don't think I could do 2-hour sets, but I could do 40 minutes.
Yeah, just play and see what the audience reacts to. But it's also getting people out to go to shows now, too. I mean, that's another hard thing for musicians.
Oh, since COVID hit, that's really reduced in the local pubs. Yeah.
Oh, here in the States, too. I mean, to get people to come out to see a friend's band played, and there was hardly anybody there. I was like, oh, man, it's hard. I mean, that's the tough part, to get people to come out after COVID. You're right.
Well, we used to play from we'd start at 9 o'clock, you know, and we'd do 2-hour sets. So we'd finish at 11:30. The pub would close at midnight. That's all been shifted earlier. So I was doing a regular weekly thing here, and it was 7:30 start, and the pub would close at 11 or even 10:30. You know, it's
right.
It's a bit weird, really.
Yeah.
It has had a lasting effect, that COVID.
It has. You're right, and it hasn't really ended as far as people not doing as much anymore, going out. You're right, and that's the sad part of it, but no, we'll take it. We'll see what happens going forward. So, Graham, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, I enjoyed it. It got a bit, every now and again, there was a bit of a glitch, so I was a bit worried that it...
Yeah, I have to fix that. There's been some glitches, but I'll make sure I fix that up. I can fix it now with editing.
Okay.
To get a channel, you have to learn how to edit. You have to learn how to do these shorts. There's a lot of things that I learned doing this, but it's been a really satisfying series. Speaking of great musicians like you, Theo Travis, I've spoken to, Dave Struck, some great people.
I met Theo, the first time I met Theo, he was at my neighbour's wedding.
Oh, how about that?
And that was way before he had anything to do with Gong.
Okay.
You know, way before then. This would have been in 89, 88.
He's a great guy, fantastic player too.
Yeah, I
love his work with Robert Fripp.
Yeah, he's worked with Fripp. He's worked with. He's done a lot of stuff. I think he's worked with the guy from Bebop Deluxe.
Bill Nelson.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's worked with him as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you've worked with a lot of people. Yeah, you've worked with a lot of people too. I mean, you're up there too with some greats. So once again, thank you for doing this, Graham, and keep the music going.
I'll do my best.
And if you could send me over send me over some links to put in the description. I heard them, but if you want to add some things, I'll make
do it
sure
now.
it's
I'll do it now
in the video. Okay.
I'll do it now.
Okay.
Then it's done.
Okay.
Just have a quick think.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Great.
you very much, and thanks for asking me, Dennis. It's great.
Okay. Thanks for coming on. Take care
Thank you.
now. Cheers. See
Bye-bye.
ya. Bye-bye. Bye.